Welcome everyone to the Voices of Terminus show. We are back. Hello Lex.
Going on,
Cheer. Hello Josh.
Hey guys.
So we're officially back. We weren't really technically away. We did a few special shows in our so-called break, but we're now officially there to present the show Thursday. How have you guys been? Have you missed us? So we're basically here to talk about the Halflings today. In the October newsletter, they filled a lot of info and shared some concept art and ideas, more in-depth ideas on how they approached the Halflings, how they came to be, and we're going to talk about this today. But before we do that, as you guys know, we had a contest running at the same time, where you guys go out there and create stream assets for us. We're going to present the winner on a different show, but we're going to announce today, obviously, who won, because we have so much to go through today, and we don't want to cut the time short and have to revisit this again. But Resum is our winner, and congratulations to Resum for his assets that he provided, and we will share those at a later date. They'll be on the website as well for you guys to review, but let's get into this. So we're going to talk about the Halflings today, and to help you guys understand and see what we found out and how we approach this, let's get into it, shall we? So we know there's three clans. We've got the Nothi, the Maiden clan, the Akaps, and we're going to go and talk about each individual one as we go through it. So I'll search for a link in a minute for the newsletter, and so you guys can actually go through this with us as we go through it. So this is what we found out about the Nothi. Spoken Nothi, they have a hatred towards Molzith, the Wraith King, due to a curse that was bestowed upon them. They usurp the Aquaps by settling into Wild's End. They primarily hunt, mixed with relaxation and a lot of training, and they're self-sufficient. They seek to the balance between hunting and recuperation, and they live for the moment. They live in that moment when they're out there being wild, ambitious, and mischievous, and so forth. So that's what we basically got to read upon the Nothi as a part of the clans of the Halflings. Yeah. You guys want to add something to that while I go and search for the link real quick so the guys can pull it up and join in?
Well, to me, they really sound like Rangers.
No, I like the fact that they are quite exuberant and that they're full of energy, and it really enhances their class, I think.
Yeah, it definitely does. And we're going to bring up that link. So this is where you can go into more depth on these guys. We basically kind of took the relevant information we thought that was new and something to talk about on these that actually give us some actual figures on how they were approached. There's a lot more depth going into it. To explain how VR approached this is they actually got a really cool dedicated team of 4 or 5 people that go into discussions, and it starts off with basically the lore, and then from that is where they start building their races, their classes, and it's a very long, in-depth process that these guys go through to explain how they go about it. So they actually do put a lot of thought into this. And one thing to note was, when they approached the Halflings, what really got the ball rolling for them was the fact that I think it was Joppa who mentioned the movie Hook and Rufio's Lost Boys. And that's where you can really see this inspiration come from. You know, that's what has driven these Halflings to be how we see them and engage them through the lore. So, an interesting point on the Nothi is the fact that they basically had an influence on picking Wild's End, which we'll get into in a bit. But there's a point of interest that I want to bring up, basically, that's mentioned in this lore that relates to the Nothi itself. And the fact is, this is from the lore that I basically pulled out. This is a reference out of the lore. It's definitely interesting as something to discuss. Just to be close to a high population of race in the gate. What is this gate they are talking about? It's been mentioned in the lore of Wild's End. It's been mentioned now within the Halflings. It definitely sounds like there could be some kind of portal, some kind of encampment of sorts that has some kind of mystical power to it. Because basically what it's saying is there's a high population of race in this gate area. We know there's race going to be somewhere else. We've seen race in Black Dagger's Keep and so forth. But there seems to be a higher population within Wild's End at this so-called gate. So that's definitely something of interest to look at. Could this be a possible zone, a possible dungeon, and so forth?
It could be. It could also be, I don't know, maybe when the Halfling souls came through, or the souls came through itself, the wraiths also came through with them. Mm-hmm. And these are just souls that haven't been formed yet, that are still trying to tether themselves to the Terminus world at the end of the day. So it's maybe something that would be prominent going forward.
What do you think, Lex, about this so-called gate that was mentioned?
Well, there's a lot of missing context to it, and I will admit that I did not go back and read the lore like a good co-host. Mm-hmm. So most of it I forget. But I mean, I see potential here. I see potential for a dungeon. I see potential for a raid zone, and or you could even use that as like the central driving force between the Halfling story. You know, there's a lot they can do with that. I would be interested to see what actually happens. I mean, does it turn into something like something from WoW lore, like the Black Portal or the whatever it was called, or is it just like just a gate to another zone that is for specifically like raiding, or is it like something that the Halflings have to maintain or prevent from opening? I mean, we just don't really know.
The good thing is, though, you can see that they've actually put a lot of thought into their lore. It's something like, it looks like it's something they can build upon later in the future through, you know, an added adventure pack or to expand on the lore. You know, you can definitely see that these guys have put a lot of thought into the existing lore and how the future can kind of come by adding references like the gate, where nobody really knows what is this. You know, it could be a dungeon, it could be a zone, it could be a portal. It can be all kinds of things, and you can see that they have definitely put a lot of time and effort into thinking this out and how they can push in new ideas and expand on certain ideas. Yeah.
I think that it could also maybe another dimension going forward as well, as you say, future expansions. Just like the old EverQuest had the planes of power type of thing.
Yeah.
So who knows? Could be something for that as well.
I certainly think it's important in lore to have some things remain a mystery.
Yes.
Like with EverQuest, you had the spires all around the world, which were, you know, a lot of port locations eventually. But when the game first came out, no one really knew what they were about.
Yeah.
And it really gives the developers a chance to either take their time and develop that story to actually bring them into something else, or to just honestly leave them there as a bit of a mystery.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, one of those. It's like one of those EverQuest mysteries that you think there's something related to it, but in the end, it was just put there on purpose to give you something to speculate on. That could also be. Anyway, let's go move on to the Maiden clan. And that's spoken as it is, Maiden, and then clan. The reason why I'm bringing this up is for the simple fact that the person who does the lore, Illustrami, or what? I'm sorry, Justin, I think it is. Basically helped with the pronunciation of certain words, and we brought those in as well. So, so the Maiden clan are of spiritual heartbeat, reserved and contemplative. They have 6 wards that guide their people. Their name was taken from the first Maiden Leone, who outwitted Molzith. And they're students of the Kiri history, which is basically how their original state. They were known as Kiri. Kieran was the Ward of Flame and Culture, and basically he was the first ward, more or less. Their main guy. And history to them, their history is basically very important to their particular clan. So that's what we found out on the Maiden. And let's go and move on to.
Well, I just want to ask about the 6 wards.
Go on then.
So what are the 6 wards in your thoughts as to what they might be at the end of the day?
Well, I'm guessing they're the 6 protectors. The original.
Are they halflings? Are they enchanted beings? Are they symbols? Or what do you think they are, though?
Well, because we have Kieran as the Ward of Flame, I'm guessing that there's a lot of nature with it. So you might have the Ward of Flame, the Ward of Wind, the Ward of Earth, the Ward of Water, whatever. So I'm guessing it's kind of an elemental being of sorts.
Okay.
Like a wisp of whatever. Could possibly be a wisp related to that sense, is what I kind of see them as.
Yeah. I think Frogzor says it. Yeah. Fire, earth, water, air, life, and death.
Yep.
Could be that. Yeah.
Yep. That kind of screams arcane to me. Like it's almost an arcane faction with most of their casters.
Yeah.
Especially because you say there that students of Kiri history, knowledge, and they also study culture. That just almost screams wizard to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because your atypical wizard in high fantasy is very knowledgeable, very very intelligent, and almost snobbish. That's almost the kind of feel I get from that.
That actually relates more towards the Escaps. When we look at these, they look upon themselves within the Halflings as the nobles of the race, because they came from a line of nobility at some point. They have a desire to lead their race. Escaps differed by setting up trade partners early on, so they kind of are the leaders who set up trade with the other cultures outside of their race, and they embrace modern structure as well. So they're kind of more modern, have a more modern feel to them. And this is actually going to be an interesting talking point later on when we go and have a look at the 3 different clans, based on the fact of what was the grinding stone for how they approached the Halflings. Being, if you look at them being like Rufio's Lost Boys from Hook, that only describes actually one portion of the 3 clans. If from my point of view, but we'll get into that in a bit. So we have, those are the 3 clans that we have, and then we have some more information on basically coming up. Who are the Halflings? Basically, explaining to us in general what all these Halflings are as one. So this is the information we found out through reading the newsletter and the information that was given to us. So they're definitely lovers of nature, feral, energetic, and seemingly joyful. They're very tribalistic. They're very cursed old souls. They will hunt wraith when possible. Halflings depict nature in every sense, meaning that they are even nature. The rest of Terminus is childlike to them, so they kind of view it through a child's eyes. It's like everything that they see that's outside of their realm is new to them, and they look at it through a child's eyes. But they still don't, even though they have that childish view, I personally don't see them as that. Weighing up the differences as well of the new races as well, they basically weigh it in.
I saw it also. I could also see it slightly differently to that as well, in terms of the childlike and new to them. I was assuming because they're such an old souls itself, everything is very new in Terminus, and so they could be one of the oldest Terminus races to settle in Terminus itself, and thus everybody else is newer to them. So maybe that could be also another aspect of it.
Yeah, it gives me, the childlike, when you think of children, how they view the world, everything's exciting to them. That's how I see it being translated. Is they aren't exactly childlike, but they view it like a child. They embrace it. Everything that's new, it's sort of interest to them, and it's mystical. It's engaging. It's exciting. That's how how I think. That is how I would translate exactly that on the race itself.
True.
Revisiting the Halfling lore and the newsletter, which is kind of like a refresher, or even like Halflings 1.1. It really makes me think that it's almost like wood elves meet hobbits.
Yeah.
They're all about the nature of being, well, quote unquote, natural, but they do have a very strong culture amongst them. They do enjoy some architecture, but they also enjoy relaxing and lounging about sometimes. The whole childlike wonder view of the world, that kind of just makes me think Hobbit almost, where you just want to lounge around. You see an elephant, you're like, oh my god, look at that thing, it's amazing.
That's the interesting thing, though. They said in their newsletter, these aren't Tolkien hobbits. There's a familiarity to it, definitely, but that's not what they were aiming for. First off, they don't have hairy feet. That's the first thing. But anyway, the final thing is clothing is functional. It's not used to inspire and influence and how people will view you on the world, but it's very colourful though. Well, that can be discussed because they do have by the looks of it, a set choice of colours that they will use, and a lot of brown tones, a lot of purple, reddish, green tones. So it's even though that is colourful, it's still kind of limited.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the pictures on screen right now, and you don't really see a whole lot of extra frills. I like maybe the leaf that's at the elbow joint would be considered a little bit of a frill. The feathers in the hair, while they don't really fit that whole functional thing, for all we know, that could be a symbol of status.
Exactly.
So thereby making it functional. But you don't see a lot of extra doodads and such on this particular character.
Yep.
And you can see also that the face painting itself is depicted of their clan or possibly sub-clan itself.
Yeah.
As to what they are part of.
That's where
I'm also... Yeah?
No, I was just going to say that's where that tribalistic feel comes from.
Yeah, exactly. Just another point is that on the bark and the leaves coming off it, that is very magical in the sense that if that is still growing while it is functional as well in terms of clothing, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah. So the Halfling environment, use nature for inspiration in their architectural design, meaning that they have striped bark treated with resin, sap, leaves, timber, and roots. and they use natural resources in their construction and crafts. Resin appears a lot in their arms and armor. Tap resin is versatile and unique to that culture. That's another interesting point to look at as well. That this sap resin seems to be something that is uniquely identified only to the Halflings. So when we go and get into our discussion points, we'll go into all of that in a bit. Let's go and move on to how the outside world basically takes up on the Halflings, how they are viewed on the outside.
Okay.
So, from an outside standpoint, they're not built for society's graces, under-domesticated, introverted as people, seek out adventure where possible in the outside world. That's how their take is from the outside, how people view these Halflings. Just to note as well, these are the things that we basically pulled out from that newsletter that we thought were worth discussing and giving a new viewpoint on the Halflings. Relating this to the original lore on the Halflings, you can see the connections made and how they actually built off of that to bring us what they display today. So our discussion points are going to be, this is where we're going to start discussing things after we've heard all of this now. Bring those up on screen for you now.
Yeah, I think that the outside world actually view the Halflings as childlike and therefore undermine their position, and which could be an advantage to the Halflings itself in most situations in terms of bargaining, etc.
Oh yeah, they're probably always going to be looked at and be underestimated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like definitely. I could definitely see the other races of the game can basically looking on them like you would an unruly child.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of just look at them like, okay, get out of my business because you're bugging me.
Yeah.
Go play with your friends.
You know, they're not seen as a major threat. It's like, you know, they're a bunch of childish people. We'll just go in there with brute force to scare them away. You know, and that's where they are mightily wrong if they go and do that. So,
exactly.
Our discussion points are going to be the differences between the three clans, why Wild's End was picked, what makes these Halflings feel so familiar but yet so uniquely different, their lifestyle, their clothing, and their housing, use of materials, how they interact and engage with the rest of the world. So let's start off with the differences between the three clans. We've heard what they are all in their own sense. We've heard the approach made by VR, stating, you know, bringing in Rufio's Lost Boys from the movie Hook. For me, if I look at this, the difference between the three clans is pretty clearly stated. But on the reference to the Lost Boys, the only clan that I see where that actually relates to is the first one, the Nothi. They seem like the mischievous type, the ones that go out and adventure and, you know, are mischievous, playful, joyful, living in the moment. That's you know, that's the only clan that really describes that viewpoint.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I agree with you. I also think that I'd say they're more PC based. They'd be the ones to choose to go adventuring. The other two, well, I'd say from the EQs, I think it's called, whatever they're called, would be more NPC based, more traders that you'd see scattered around certain cities, maybe, selling wares, selling certain things, and bargaining. Yeah.
it will certainly be interesting to see how they handle different factions within a race.
Mm-hmm.
Simply because, I mean, will they take this as an opportunity to split the classes into their own factions?
Exactly.
Which won't necessarily segregate them per se, because you'll still have some kind of cooperation because a halfling is a halfling.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll have this seed for the story of maybe potential conflict in the background between the factions, or as Josh mentioned, or is like everyone going to be possibly put into a one faction and then NPCs control the others? It's something that a lot of people don't really think about, but it'll be interesting just to see where VR takes it.
Well, you know, viewing the 3 different clans that we have, and looking at the class chart, we have Bard, we have Druid, we have Ranger, we have Rogue, and we have Warrior. As the classes that have been released for the Halfling.
Mm-hmm.
Now, based on the 3 different clans, where would you guys put the Bard, for instance?
I'd put it, the Bard, I think, for me, would go into the Maiden clan.
Whatever that first one was.
The Nothi,
The
yeah.
mischievous one, yeah.
And what about the Druid?
Druid for me
those
would
are-
be Maiden as well.
Yeah, I'd have to say Maiden with them.
Then you got the Ranger and the Rogue.
For me, that would be Nothi. Would be the Nothi, I reckon.
I think was that first one? That was Nothi, was it?
Yeah, that's the first one.
I could see them with the rogues. The Ranger could potentially be in either of the other 2. I mean, they could go with the Druids in Maiden or SQ. I don't remember
S-Caps,
what it
yeah.
was. S-Caps.
Yeah.
Or it could go with them potentially.
Yeah.
And then you got the final one's the Warrior.
S-Caps for me. To me, warriors are always leaders.
Yeah, I would go with that as well. I'd go with that.
The way I view this, I think personally, I think basically the classes aren't finished. If I look at the S-Caps being the nobles, the ones who build relations and everything, that kind of screams somebody who has a lot of magic in them, like an enchanter or something like that, or a summoner of sorts. So I think that they've done this deliberately to kind of advance later on, bringing in a lot of more uniqueness, immersion towards the individual clans within the race, so that people can actually have a bit of variance going forward, giving them potential bonuses for the individual factions within. Like the Nothi, for instance, I can picture somebody having a speed bonus, an agility bonus, because they're so adventurous, mischievous, troublesome. They might have a higher charisma basically towards that. Whereas if you look at the Maiden clan, very spiritual. I could see the healing classes. Getting wisdom, getting bonuses,
intelligence, getting bonuses.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of see maybe that being a possibility later down the road, where they could add in different classes. But for me, for the most part, apart from the Druid, I'd put them all in the Nothi and put the Druid in the Maiden clan. I don't see a noble one quite there yet.
Right. I think the interesting thing is that you could technically get away with putting almost any class in 2 different clans. I mean, they would technically fit, because there's no clear defined line for any particular class, we'll say. Maybe it might even be an option that when you start, you have to, maybe through progression of your personal story, you choose a clan. I mean, we just don't know. But I mean, you could see the warrior fitting into the, God, I forget him again, but the first one or the leader one.
The escapes, yeah, based as a leader function. Yeah, that's where you could
the same with the bard. The same with a bard. A bard could be very mischievous because he's rogue-ish like, but he could also be a leader because he's very charismatic.
Yeah, but he could also be magical in that sense, and sit into the Maiden clan where the music comes from the magic side of the Halflings.
I think we can all agree that would be awesome if they did it like that. If people could actually go and create their Halfling and also choose what clan they want to belong to. You know, it's the same with, you know, looking at the human race later on down the line. If they go and break in factions there, you could have good humans, you could have bad humans, you could have neutral humans, you could add the barbarians to a part of the descendant of human race, and so forth and so forth. It definitely leaves room to wonder and speculate and wish upon something like this to happen, because that brings a lot more immersion and a lot more to how you engage the world. If you're not just a Halfling, you're a Nothi Halfling, you're a Maiden Clan Halfling, or you're a Escapes Halfling. I'm one of nobility. I'm one of spiritual power. I'm one of, you know, I want to be mischievous. You can actually go and play that character how it's intended. And
well, not even necessarily as the class is intended. It could just be wherever you feel you fit in this world.
But I'm also curious whether it's a limitation as to where the clans are allowed within their own race. So, say now, if you choose a Maiden clan, for instance, you can go into a hallowed area within the Maiden clan's home area, which could allow you different things. I don't know what advantages you'd get out of that, but that'd be pretty cool if you're restricted in certain areas.
Oh yeah, and it would make sense because, well, depending on how the clans are set up, if they're very isolated, where it's like the only reason we really tolerate the other clans is because they're also Halflings. That's what binds them together. Someone from the Maiden clan might not be welcome into maybe a more administrative building because they feel like they're just going to cause problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go and move on to why Wild's End was picked. Well, you know, it's pretty obvious at the beginning. It was kind of influenced. The Escapes being the noble ones, the leaders of the Halflings, kind of had that authority to pick where they would reside in Terminus, more or less. But the Nothi, being who they are, influenced that decision. Because of the high impact of the Wraith being in and around Wild's End, around that gate area, so they could go and hunt them out, because they have a hatred towards them and they hunt them kind of like for sport. So that's actually kind of an interesting twist to it as well, how they kind of interact with each other and influence each other. It definitely makes one wonder where the lore could go with that later on down the line.
Right. There is an awful lot of potential, and the thing is, with almost every one of the races, they've left the lore open enough to where we feel like we've got some information. We kind of get the gist of what's going on here, but we're never going to know until we dive in.
Yeah.
And just because we've dived into a Halfling or an Elf or a Dwarf character doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to start playing that character and then a month down the road go, okay, what just happened? This I didn't expect, you know?
Yeah.
And with how many open ends they have in almost every one of the lore sections on the website right now, they could literally do a 180 on some of them.
Yeah.
And it would be totally justified if they do it right.
They left a lot of room to kind of play around, mess around with the lore, and create complete unique plot twists that are just gonna, you know, make you go, what the hell happened? Whoa, what's going on? So I actually do love the approach that VR have done in creating their halflings. So, what makes these halflings feel so familiar, but yet so uniquely different? The fact of the matter is, for me personally, I love the approach that they took towards these halflings. When I think of halfling, I think of, it's obviously half and half. That's a given. It's something that's not fully grown. It's in between. It's a teenager, basically. It's not a grown up. It's not a child anymore. It's in between, but it's got stuck there. But a lot of people relate, rightfully so, to the Hobbit. That's how they see a halfling, with hairy feet, big fat jolly bellies, living in round little huts. To
be fair, that's exactly how the halflings in EverQuest 1 were depicted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Literally.
And they've gone ahead now and turned this halfling folk into something uniquely different, but it's still so familiar. I love the way they've approached this because they're living in trees in the high. So think of Kelethin.
Yeah,
that's how I picture their city to be. Up in the trees with long wooden bridges and huts and shrines and all this kind of stuff. And they're not chubby. They're actually pretty sporty and fit looking. They seem to have
They're sprightly and lithe and very wispy.
And witty as well. Mischievous. So it's still what a halfling is depicted to be.
Yeah.
But with a lot of twists and changes, and if that's how they go about all the races going forward, that we all come to know, then I applaud VR for doing that, because it takes guts.
Yeah, exactly. And just looking at the artwork, it's amazing artwork. The artist who did that is super gifted.
Top notch.
And the one thing that I take away from these pictures is that they're not kids. You can see the maturity in their faces.
Yeah.
That they have this old soul within them, and the artist captures that perfectly. And I think if they can capture that in the game, it'll be amazing.
It's kind of like, it's done on purpose. It's almost like, their childlike being is a protection mechanism against the rest of the world. You think we're childish. We're going to trick you in thinking we're childish, but hey, we're actually fairly wise, very smart, intelligent beings, and we've got you kind of attitude. It's kind of like a protective barrier kind of thing. It's what gives them protection to the outside, of people thinking that they're a childish young being, but in all honesty, they aren't.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's almost like, M. Night Shyamalan's, or how the hell you say his name. It's a twist where they could potentially look like just, unruly children. But it turns out that they are literally like the oldest races on Terminus. Like, they live the longest. They're much more established than we know. For all we know, they got tunnels underground. It would just be nice to see that one of these more what's the word I'm looking for? More joyful races. It actually ends up turning out to be like a superpower versus, they're just, little kids over there beating each other up. Just let them go. And
if we think about it, in the original lore, they had 10 generations before they went into their final oblivion. That 10th generation was stopped. They were stopped right before it was meant to happen, where they go into being just dust, basically. So if we look at a generation, then they're a few hundred years old, at least.
Exactly.
They are very old. They got stopped, and their past is still remembered and part of their culture, even on Terminus. So they have a lot of wisdom for sure. So let's go and talk about their lifestyle, their clothing, and their housing.
I just want to say that these guys don't eat for joy; they eat for necessity. That's why they're so thin. Not like the other halflings are depicted in the other games.
Definitely.
Well, yeah, halflings or hobbits, if you will, they're almost borderline gluttony,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? I mean, look at Tolkien's hobbits. You know, it's like what they had like 5-6 meals a day.
Exactly.
Their idea of a sport was smoking pipeweed. But then you've got the Pantheon halflings where, you know, they do enjoy relaxing, and that could just be putting your feet up and listening to nature, for all we know. It could be their idea of relaxing is hanging upside down from a tree.
Oh,
But,
or vining around or something like that. Eh?
yeah, but they're also very frugal, and they don't waste, is kind of what I'm getting from a lot of this. Like, if they were to hunt an animal, then you would see the bones being used, the cartilage being used, the fur being used, everything.
Nature uses nothing goes to waste in nature. Everything has a purpose.
Yep.
And that's exactly what they're doing as well.
And to me, that brings to the forefront the thought of them being old souls.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like they've come to learn the necessity of not taking too much, or to balance what they take versus what they need.
Exactly.
But when they're not having to deal with the necessities of life, they're having fun, they're relaxing, they're chasing each other around, you know, they're playing tricks on the locals or a caravan that's coming through Wild's End. They're throwing acorns at the horses to make them gallop off, you know.
And another thing that I think as well, when it comes to Wild's End, their environment, I think they're also the protectors as well. You know, they might go out and hunt a bear or a wolf or a deer and so forth and so forth, but they
not for sport.
But not for sport. They keep it in balance. They keep it in check so that nature can run its path. So nothing is overpopulated or underpopulated. So they're true protectors at the same time. And I also think that if they do go out, it's always going to be in small groups. There will always be a small group of halflings going out to hunt, or that go and cause havoc in Thronefast and run around the marketplace, pickpocketing everybody and tricking everybody, and, you know, playing tricks and all this kind of stuff. That's how I kind of see their lifestyle being. And their clothing, like, you know, it's pretty simple. Their clothing is a necessity. It's still colourful. It's still got its identification marks through the tribal aspect of things. It does its purpose. It's there to do its purpose. When it's cold, they're gonna have clothing that keeps them warm. When it's not, they're gonna have clothing that gives them some bit more freedom. I also think that their clothing will also be easily identified. You'll see who is a shaman, who is a bard, who is a noble, who is a maiden clan, who is a Nothi, and so forth and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does raise a point, though. I'll get to that when we get to the use of materials. Okay.
So, like I said, you know, the housing is. We'll see that later on as well, what the housing looked like. But it kind of, you know, reflecting back on what we first said about the halflings when we did our first show, we were pretty spot on, very close to the same idea of how VR pictured, you know, how they've described these halflings to us, and you know, we weren't that far off from describing these halflings. Their housing, it's pretty much what I expect it to be now. After seeing the screenshots and seeing the concept arts put forward from Forest, showing us off the first conceptual art. I can't wait to see the Halfling City. It's going to look beautiful. I see a lot of, you know, colours, the sap resin being used, and leather flags with, you know, tribal symbols on it, and also I can't wait to see their city, and even see a festival. They must throw one hell of a party.
I know people have probably been waiting for this one, but I'm really excited to see the Halfling City too, but for different reasons. For me, it's kind of like scoping out a buffet.
Very funny.
The scar.
Let me tell
the
you,
scar.
I bet them halflings taste awfully yummy.
I think that'd be actually quite tough and
I think
sinewy for you.
I think the Scar, right, would get a beat down because they're over ambitious. They think, hey, what are these younglings gonna do? We're gonna.
But that's the thing. That's the thing with the Scar. That's not what they think, because remember they're hyper aggressive, so they don't see a weak opponent and just say, oh, I'm just gonna knock this out real quick. They just go, I see something that has to die, I'm gonna rip it to shreds. They're gonna go overkill. No underestimation.
So let's go and talk about the use of materials, because they seem to be very limited. They will only use what nature offers them, which is basically, again, a reflection of how, why I say that they are the caretakers of nature. They are nature themselves, as it was already said by VR in the newsletter. So I think that they will not go and chop down trees left, right, and centre. They will actually go and seek out trees that are dying, that couldn't be helped anymore. They will plant new trees, new lifestyle to use their materials.
Or they would manipulate the growth of a tree.
Yes.
Correct. That's exactly it. And my question earlier on would be that if we got the warriors part of the halflings, what kind of armor would they wear? Because you don't see a lot of metals within their within the dress code of the two that we see over here.
I think,
or no metal at all. So is it ironwood? Is it something that they've created and grown themselves and is unique to halflings that they use?
Well, it's already said that the sap resin seems to be has some unique, versatile aspects to it. It's not your typical sap resin. It's something special. It's something magical to it. So I think that they will draw a lot from that. But I also
think that's glue. But
I also think as well that the halfling warrior could very well be in leather, a leather wearer, not necessarily somebody who wears plate or chain. It could also be through the trading partners with the outside world, is where they kind of get their metals, basically, through trade agreements.
Yeah, they could definitely. But I still think that I personally would love to see some unique material that the halflings have that no other race has at the end of the day.
Well, that is the sap
kind of
resin.
like the dwarves.
That's what the sap resin is.
It could be that resin.
Yeah, it's that resin. Basically, what they said is very unique to the halflings. But going through what what they have: tree bark, leaves, resin, sap resin, all that. They're very limited by the sounds of it as well, or they use a limited amount of materials to not unbalance nature.
Right. Going from a more balanced standpoint, like a warrior without plate is kind of like a wizard without magic, in my opinion. So I'm going to assume that there's no restriction on the materials, but you might see a halfling warrior decorate or cover his, like, say, a shiny breastplate with bark and leaves and such to make it look more natural than you would see on, say, a human warrior.
I still think that there'll be something like ironwood in it. I think that'll be the equivalent of the metal for them.
Yeah, if you look at Wild's End, how mystical it is and magical, that there's almost a sense of that there's going to be some kind of hardened ironwood or a ore of some sorts that they use and break down into a natural metal that they're going to use. But their preferred choice for their buildings and basic layout for armor is kind of like, again, touching on the fact that they're trying to deceive people. They're trying to deceive the outside world, like Lex said, rightfully so, using bark to give it more of that natural look. That also will throw off the outside world, the enemy, because they'll think, he's underprotected. He goes to hit him, he's got chain armor or leather or metal or plate armor underneath that nobody saw, like the dwarves with their mithril that they put underneath. that's unpenetrable through, with a normal dagger or sword and everything. It basically protects them from getting stabbed and stuff. So it could also be that way.
Yeah.
So
it will certainly be interesting to see how it pans out. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I enjoy plate wearing classes personally because I tend to gravitate towards the tanks or even plate DPS classes. But if each race is obviously going to have their own cosmetic version of the same item, an iron breastplate is going to look different on every race.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how it changes from, say, a human to a halfling. I mean, is it going to look metal? Is it going to be shiny? Is it going to have maybe carvings of trees in it? Is it going to have a slight, almost looks like it's covered in that resin?
Yeah.
Which means, does it make it look almost muddy?
Or glassy.
I personally want to know.
Yeah, or glassy even,
Yeah.
So, how do you guys think that they interact and engage with the rest of the world?
I personally feel that they only interact with the rest of the world for the necessity of goods, to be honest. I think they're quite an introversive race itself, where they don't really care too much for the outside world, and will only trade them for stuff such as metals, maybe rare stuff that they need for growth, knowledge even.
Yeah.
But that's about it from our point of view.
I can agree to a lot of that. Because they're introverts, or at least perceived to be introverts, and we know that they are quite self-sufficient, I can see them as being like looking at other races as neutral. They don't care if you're evil, they don't care if you're good. It's just, how do you deal with us?
Yeah.
If you want to trade, then sure, we'll trade. But if you don't want to trade, we're not going to seek you out to trade.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. If say a human was injured and lost in Wild's End, I could see a halfling offering aid. But at the same time, they
not revealing everything.
Yeah. Not telling them that, my home is just 3 trees over. Just helping them through the forest, get to where they're going, maybe give them a healing potion, just send them on their way.
They're very deceptive towards outsiders.
Yeah.
I mean, it's clearly established the scraps are basically the noble ones, the ones that kind of go out and get the trade deals and make the connection points to other races. You've got the Maiden clan, who are very spiritual, who keep kind of logbooks on their whole entire lore, history, and everything going forward. Then you got the Nothi, who basically go out there and just be that mischievous little playful buggers that they are. So there's still a structure there, and I think in all though, all 3 of those individual clans, they have a common deceptancy towards others. They're not going to reveal too much. They're not going to, hey, come on over. Oh, like Lex said, I live down the road. They're not going to do that.
No, they seem like they're going to be friendly, but they're not going to go out of their way to give you information.
And
exactly.
And it's something like they'll check first before they help you.
Right.
They'll basically weigh it in. What's the risk of me now going out of these bushes to go and help this poor fellow? Or what risk do I have by going now to this invitation from Throne Fast or from Fatal or from there and there? They will always weigh it out. They will always balance it. They will always have a look. Right, am I by myself? Do I have a group of people with me? Am I in a position that could reveal too much? So they definitely think twice before they act on something.
And even if you do meet them up for a drink around a campfire, that type of thing, I think that you'd end up telling them everything they want to know and not really getting much information from them at the end of the day. And you'll walk away scratching your head and thinking, gee,
what did I just do?
I didn't even catch their second name. Type of thing.
They know my
mother's
brother-in-law's
name.
cousin's social insurance number.
Exactly.
To me, I don't know if this is just like the storyteller side of me that's kicking in. I could see, like, say, the Revenant return to Terminus, and a lot of the races are convened in council, and the Halflings just like jumping around the back of the seats and annoying everybody. But the minute that they open their mouths, what they tell you is actually extremely valuable information.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
you would not expect it.
And it's also like, you know, like you just said, sitting in a cinema at the back row throwing popcorn at people, annoying them, right? They get up, you start whinging, they'll tell you something that you think has no value whatsoever, but it's actually a very important riddle of sorts that you have to figure out, because they're actually telling you something of value. Another thing to point out real quick as well, that we forgot to mention, is with the Maiden clan, they actually have a connection to their Pantheon. A verbal connection. You know, they are on talking terms with the Pantheon for the Halflings, which is kind of unique to them as well. That's definitely an interesting point that we definitely have to make here. It was mentioned in the newsletter that they're on talking terms with their Pantheon, whereas other races might not be, or not so much. So it's kind of like, I think that them engaging with the Pantheon kind of has an impact on the three clans itself and how they interact. It's kind of like their council, their higher protector. It's definitely an interesting viewpoint as well, seeing that the Pantheon is somebody that engages with them and has contact with them. I think it's more of the balancing of things. Hey, you guys, you know, you don't want to go and do this because of that could happen. It's kind of like the higher protector of things to keep that balance going within the Halfling culture.
Yeah, true. I think that's because of their connection with nature and their age, that they're going to have a closer connection itself with the world.
You know.
So, yeah.
You know Star Trek. Everybody's seen Star Trek: Deep Space Nine, the Ferengi. When it comes to trading terms, that's how I see the Halfling. They'll sit there and they'll squabble in their little language.
But
you know, like Pi said, you know, calculating things to throw people off, like a typical Ferengi, to get the best outcome for themselves. And you'll think you're making the deal of a lifetime, whereas you're actually getting squat for that deal. And you're not going to realize it until it's too late.
Because you're just going to think they're simple little forest children, basically.
Yeah.
You're not going to take them seriously. So, but all of a sudden you realize that they have all the cards, and you are what we call in the professional world screwed.
Dude.
So let's go and talk about, you know, what drives them and where they get their inspirations from. As we know already, VR pointed out that there's a lot of inspiration with the tribal aspect of things, where they drew the concept of the Halflings, and a heavy impact is Hook's Rufio's Lost Boys. Do you see anything else come into that? Do you think that actually represents what we've talked about today? Is their interpretation, their viewpoint spot on?
Well, I'll say I think we took a lot of liberties in terms of speculation, which is obvious. We do an awful lot of that here, for those of you that are just tuning in. But when I see the picture that's on the screen now, I see Rufio.
Yeah.
And it's been at least 10 years since I've seen that movie. But I can look at that and go, Rufio was the inspiration for that character. No way around it.
Yeah.
So,
100%.
I mean, the artist did a great job, and it's very obvious what the inspiration was. Not that that's a bad thing.
No, it's definitely a reflection, a representation. It actually shows how the concept, the idea, the talking points, and how he basically interpreted that is amazing. It's a brilliant transition from concept ideas, talking points to the physical sketch that we see on the screen. It's definitely. But for me, I must point out, I thought at first that was more of a shaman look than rather a druid. You know, the wolf put me off. The fact that it's dressed up in a kind of mantle, a coat of sorts. Because I basically, or the fox, whatever that is, basically, because what I did is, because of the fact that they were tribalistic, I went straight to the Indians and looked at the Indian culture, looked at what a druid looked like and what a shaman looked like. And from the Indian perspective, that was, you know, for me, the shaman, but it's actually the druid. So that kind of threw me off, but it's not a bad thing. But I definitely like the approach that they've taken. And yes, they've done it justice. I don't look at these halflings as Tolkien hobbits. They are definitely unique to their own self, and deservedly so. So good job.
I would say these are Lost Boys 2.0, to be honest. Where those were more childish and more dirty and more script. These ones seem to be more refined in their own sense, but still Lost Boys type of thing.
Yeah. To me, it's kind of like hobbits meet wood elves, but the style is Lost Boys.
Yeah. So I'm going to go and jump over the other question about the culture, but we kind of touched on that all throughout the whole show. Let's go and have a look at the destiny of the halfling race in the game now and the future. Now, where can we see VR branching off and adding to this? I see a lot of potential going forward with the race. Like we've already said, it would be great to be able to pick a clan background to go with your character creation, to kind of tell your own lore story going forward, to give you a few variations. That's what we've always kind of tried to bring forward. Is imagine having a bard from the Nothi character and a bard from the Maiden clan, and through the difference of the background, they might have a few racial differences amongst themselves. So the bard might get a speed buff for the Nothi clan, whereas being a bard on the Maiden clan might give him a more magical use for his instruments.
Yeah.
And so forth. So
there's an interesting thought. What about the magical wood itself, enchanting the actual lutes and the musical instruments that the bards might have?
I'm sorry, but my inner halfling, my inner child just laughed when you said magical wood.
Lex.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we'll get into that when we get to the crafting aspect of it.
Oh, okay.
That kind of touches into there. So I see a lot of possibilities, even if we don't get to choose at the beginning a clan per se. It's something that they could introduce later on down the road when they want to go and branch off and maybe add some plot twists to the whole story. Maybe a look back on their actual history, on their original planet per se, or even as something to kind of advance your character, your halfling later. So later on down the road, you might have to go and pick a clan to kind of take your destiny in your own hands. You know, your rite of passage to become a true halfling. You know, maybe you start off as a halfling that isn't quite identified yet. You haven't really picked your clan that you want to belong to. Maybe it's something, a rite of passage, a way of being, and that's something that they could even do later on. So you don't necessarily have to be a part of a clan at the beginning. You're a halfling. You're treated equal by everybody else. They all try and give you a bit of wisdom here and there, and later on down the road, get an expansion coming out where you choose your own destiny.
Yeah.
I would love for them
Would
to
be
introduce new clans down the road. So where they are clans that might have been lost over time, but have been influenced by the environment. So you might have a clan that is in the snow-capped mountains that is really built around that, and the environment might reflect that as well on how they've grown and how they are shown.
I mean, there's definitely a lot of room to expand on this and even expand on the clans itself. You could have a rogue force want to go and wander off somewhere else out of Wild's End and create, like Josh said, somewhere in the snowy hill mountaintop where they go and create a clan of their own. But now they ain't using brown yet.
A rogue clan that actually worships Molth, whoever it is, and has embraced the wraiths that have maybe changed them in some way.
There's definitely a lot of room to play with these guys. I mean, picture the ice halflings, all dressed up in white, and that sap resin being used to blind you even.
Yeah.
It kind of, it's kind of used as a light source. So them wearing a lot of light colored clothing with the sap resin that's highlighted kind of, turns you blind.
Exactly.
And, there's definitely room to expand on these clans and ideas and go in completely different directions. Maybe, some of them get accustomed to Throne Fast and they create a clan of their own within the human society.
Yeah.
Who knows? Definitely a lot of room. Lex, what about you?
Sorry, guys. I got my nephew visiting me, trying to be semi-entertaining while I sit here. Please just give me a quick rundown of what that was.
We're talking about the destiny of the Halflings, where they are now and where they could go in the future. How do you see it? What do you see?
Personally, I enjoy stuff like what I'm looking for? Almost political intrigue. Mm-hmm. I kind of find that stuff semi-enjoyable, especially when I'm not caught in the middle of it. I would like to see the interactions between the clans. Maybe there's a little bit of a civil war or something of that nature. Maybe one clan ends up getting decimated or perhaps merges with another. Maybe that changes the whole dynamics of the Halfling culture. Mm-hmm. Because Halflings are kind of at heart very wild, I think that the Halfling nature and society does almost demand a little bit of change after time. Yeah. So, with EverQuest 1, what you saw in Kelethin day 1, 17 years later, is still what you see in Kelethin. I don't feel that would ever remain true with these Halflings. Mm-hmm. I feel like perhaps a year or two down the road, something might change. Yeah. Or at least something should change. Because nature changes.
Yeah, it screams that. They've set out the law and the view of the game to be just that. That there is going to be change. If you go and look back at the different ages and how that all came about and what happened there and all the wars and all that lot, it screams that there's going to be another age coming that could completely go and redefine the whole dynamic of the whole world of Terminus and how the races are and this and that. So it's definitely it leaves room for that.
Yeah.
So we have how they've been perceived by others. We already touched on that and talked about that kind of thing. So let's go and get into what Josh has been waiting for. Racial advantages in crafting. Do you guys see any?
Yes. I could certainly see advantages gathering some more of the natural materials such as lumber or herbs. I could also see advantages with certain things like fletching, or, you know, alchemy to a point, because alchemy to me has always been like the shaman thing, but we know for a fact that that's not how it's going to be. So I could definitely see advantages in terms of crafting. Yeah.
I just think that they've got a lot of unique things to provide to both themselves for crafting purposes, in terms of armors and trade goods to the outside world as well.
Yeah, they have like, you know, this kind of makeshift crafting approach. You know, they make it work. You know, out of the simplest things, they make the most efficient tools to use to craft for their armor and everything. But on that note, though, you know, when it comes to the racial commodities trade and barter of goods, what do you see them kind of trading with? Because, like I said, for me, they are nature, and they're protectors of nature, and they will definitely look after nature. So they wouldn't necessarily go about it by giving away all their wood or all their resin or all their leaves and all this and all that. That will kind of disrupt the balance of nature and the balance within themselves. So for me, I see them trading with a lot of pottery stuff. You know, pots, pans, some bark, maybe some, you know, resin, because that can also be used as a power source for gunpowders or a powdered source for burning stuff. So it's for making candles and stuff like that. So it's kind of, for me, when it comes to the trade of things, they don't have that much that the outside world sees as useful, per se.
I don't know. I think they would create such beautiful woods and things like that for the outside world that would become a status symbol for a lot of races.
You've got the you know, the paintings, the symbolism that they have, the tribal aspects of things. I can see a lot of artistic things going on, like leather paintings, stuff like that of value. People coming to them, and as a visitor, you get your own tribe symbol, mate. Something like that. You know, it's more of a. It's more of like a personal trade for you. It's something that you will hold value for yourself, rather than for the general picture, for the general good, for the bettering of your culture, for your race itself. It will be something more on a personal matter. You know, music instruments, maybe arrows, special kinds of arrows that they make,
staircases, beds, boxes maybe that can hold more items at the end of the day. That become lighter the more you put in. I don't know. So there's a lot of options, I think.
Yeah. Lex?
I'm sorry again. I got my nephew here.
No worries.
Continue on without me. My opinion matters little.
Yeah, so
I'm catching bits and pieces, but
yeah. So we're gonna go and basically, if you, anything to add, Josh?
No, I'm good.
All right, so we're gonna go and move into the concept art and actually take a look at the concept art. Let's go and move on, and on the screen now you'll see some of the concept art pieces that were created for the Halflings. This is the kind of stuff that I see them trading with. You know, leather rugs, leather carpets, or that banner of sorts. You know, that's the kind of thing that I can see them trading with. I like the way the symbols have come together.
Yeah. I think they're great.
You can see on the screen you got that those two wooden poles with the resin underneath and the feathers and that animal.
Deer.
That stag thing, yeah, stag I think it is. Yeah, stag.
Yeah.
The stag. I can see stuff like that even being part of their, trade of goods.
Oh yes, most definitely. No, actually, I don't. I see those things actually. I think they take offense if other races started having their symbolism and because I think that's spiritual to them. I think that is something that they, as a race, hold dear.
Yeah.
So I don't think they'd trade that willingly, those patterns at least. But I do think they would trade skins, bare skins maybe, without the patterns, that type of thing.
I think it's kind of interesting to note that looking at the assets here, just examples of assets basically, they are obviously very Native American influenced, but with the colors that they've added, it really doesn't make it feel Native American.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
and it's going to be, the choice of colors is almost perfect. They couldn't have gone with a better choice of colors. Purples, blues, browns, greens.
But you can see that their colors are all water based.
Yeah,
they've got that faded nature to them, which you would find exactly in there, where they're using pigments from plants and maybe soils and things like that to mix with the waters to create the colors that you're seeing over there.
And it does give it well, at least in these pictures here, it does give it that very much handcrafted feel.
Oh, definitely.
And Froggy is also right. It does almost have a Celtic flair to it.
Yeah,
at least
exactly.
Designs.
Yeah, but it's stuff like that where I can see them, trading with. It's more of a personal. It's a personal halfling item that you hang up in your house as an ornament. So a lot of ornamental stuff, music items, and even looking at the one with the stag, I can even see them making staffs.
Yeah,
that almost looks like a staff itself.
Yeah.
So let's go through this concept art, and you can see now on the second picture how a typical halfling house could look like. In the center is basically a large tree, and you have a few different choices of doors, walling. They use the sap and everything to highlight the windows and so forth. I when I look at that house, at first, the first glance, I saw troll first, and then I had to take a second look to see how it was all built together. It's definitely a very unique design. If I go and look at what I've seen with Kelithin, for instance, in EverQuest 2, it's definitely very different. I don't know how it was in EverQuest, Lex. Maybe you can kind of touch on that from the viewpoint. You can see the top. It seems like their houses aren't really closed off. They have that leather on top of on top with air ducts underneath where it's tied together. So it's definitely very interesting to see how they kind of build their structures. They start off with the wood, the bark going up, and then they close it off with a leather.
Well, I kind of think that these houses are built around the trees themselves, where that is the main structure that they're building around, and inside you'll probably find they make use of a lot of roots for chairs, maybe that type of thing. Where the house is built not for luxury but for function, and the roots themselves are very utility based.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at the sketch, or almost a blueprint style sketch, it shows how it might exist off the ground. So we could definitely see stuff very much akin to at least EverQuest 1's Caladan. I'm not super familiar with this with EQ2's Caladan, where you would have simple bridges made with rope and planks connecting platforms together, and the platform might be the foundation of one of these homes.
Yeah.
It does look like the top of it is open, which could be for a fire or ventilation, whatever. Not that it actually matters.
No. Or other levels of housing
right.
as well.
Yeah. For all we know, it could just be like the summer sleeping quarters because it's cooler up there. We don't know. But anyway, and I think that's cool. I mean, I wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense to really close it off when you're under a tree, because I'm assuming these are massive, massive trees. They would provide shelter from rain. Anyway, the one thing that really struck me as odd is if you go from the top to the bottom, I mean, you see, it looks like possibly a leather wrapped around the trunk with rope that holds the tarp-like leather, which is almost screaming a bit Native American to me. And then you go into almost a modern Hobbit-ish kind of style design with the wooden shingles and the resin pane of glass almost.
Yeah.
It's a very, very good, and it's actually very subtle mix.
If you look at the wall itself, it almost looks organic.
Well, I think there's a lot of leathers used. I think there's a lot of resins used, and you probably find it's fireproofed as well.
Oh, definitely.
For that situation, but not very defensively built.
It's practical.
Yeah.
It does its use, and I can even see some buildings not having that leather on top or being closed off completely with wood. Like an open marketplace might be completely open because they might have fires going on and stuff like that. It also begs the question, this structure almost looks like it's definitely some shop of sorts where they do some kind of trade or whatever. It begs the question, would their housing also be centered, or would it be more on the outside? If you think about Hook and Rufio's Lost Boys, they were all over the place in the trees. They weren't in the center. They were on the outside branches, or in between connecting points is where they had their little housing, and that's how I kind of think that I would see their living quarters be. Maybe there's even a use inside the tree itself that does lead to underground tunnels, maybe.
Well, I also think that what you'll find is probably the most valuable houses, the most important places for defensive purposes. You won't be able to get up to those houses by climbing the trees. They'd have to be interconnected through various other bridgeways high up in the trees from other areas. So I think they'd be quite smart in designing it that way, in my mind. And so you would have a very, very difficult time getting to the heart of a clan's housing area.
Now on that note with the clans, real quick, excuse me, people, we see red rope, or what seems to be red rope, wrapped around that tree on that house, connecting to the wooden structure itself. Could that also be something that could be used as a identifier for the different clans? So you might have red rope for the one clan, the other clan might use a blue rope, the other clan might use a greenish rope. Maybe a simple way to identify.
Certainly possible. I mean, you see in the two halfling pictures that are on the screen now. On the right, you have the female, and the highlight color is a very deep purple.
Yeah.
On the other side, you see a male who has blue with a little bit of red.
Yeah.
It could be that the highlight colors would indicate different allegiances to clan or social standing, or maybe maybe even what kind of class that they're playing.
I think you hit the nail on the head originally, and I could be just as wrong as you, but I think it's definitely status and standing within the actual clan itself. That depicts how colorful the feathers may be, how big the plume may be on their heads or on their bodies, ultimately.
Same with the doors. You got 3 different examples of doors as well. You know, the first one looks very simple. The other one's got more intricate with the resin lights, and you got the other one that's very noble, and I think has a stag. Is that a stag on it? I think it is.
A stag, yeah.
Yeah. That you know, there's definitely they put a lot of thought, and they're very artistic when it comes to the design, and I think that the way he's brought this concept art to life is just phenomenal. All the different variations of colours, and if you look at the very first image again, and then you go and look at the house, and then we go and look at the bridge, it all fits together. Nothing seems off. It's really well thought through. And we're gonna have this bridge picture.
Oh, it's awesome!
It just looks wonderful, doesn't it? It just
That's amazing. Screams
very you know, this is a cheerful bunch of people.
Like to be honest, to me it almost looks like it's decorated for a celebration, even though I know it is just a standard bridge.
Exactly.
Correct. And just a quick glance as you brought it up reminded me if they had rivers and lakes that they were building around as well, this could easily be some sort of a boat type thing, or some sort of a way to move across bodies of water for them. If they could build a boat, it would be very stylish.
Yeah,
I would say.
Definitely. So definitely a brilliant job, really good job from Forrest on bringing the first concept arts to life, and I really can't wait to see how this is implemented. I can't wait to see the scar
now. Jeez.
Scar.
If they you show this much detail with just the halflings, imagine what they're going to show with unique classes. I mean races at the end of the day.
If you look on this door piece, for instance, it looks like they have
it's amazing
ivory and teeth of sort. It looks like scar claws actually.
Yeah,
they're using scar claws, don't it? It looks like scar claws. So you better be careful, dude. They clip your toenails, mate.
Bring it on, you muddy little midgets.
So, but coming off that door's handle over there, is that a root or is that something magical?
Magic root.
Magic root?
I would say maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. It's got a glow to it.
Yeah,
it's got a glow to it. Yeah. And the which is quite clever, because if you want to find a handle in the middle of the night, well, there we go.
If you look at the centerpiece as well, where the feathers are, you got like bones.
Yeah,
together.
It's
almost like
tribal.
It's almost like the doorbell.
Well, it's like I was even going to mention that if you take these two characters on the edge of the screen, you put them together, they're vastly different in design. You have one that looks like it's leathers and furs with feathers. You got the other one who's got a little bit of fur, more tribal, almost like war paint to him. Got more, well, you got like the Texas style, big resin belt buckle, and you got bones. But if you were to set them side by side, they would not look out of place.
No.
That's the amazing part.
Correct. And I was just going to say that now that you mentioned the bones, I guess that's maybe what the armor could be built out of at the end of the day. Bones stacked neatly together for armor for the warrior.
If you look at the image on the left side with the male halfling, he has bone going across his chest.
Exactly.
So, you know, and the same with, if you look at his hips as well, he's got bone protecting his hips as well, basically, the sides of him. So when he falls down or somebody tries to take a sheep shot at him, he's kind of protected from the waist above. So, you know, the concept art, wow, I can't wait to see how he brings the other races to life. And I really can't wait to see this door designed and put in game for us to go and view. Or, you know, the bridge itself, the whole concept art, it's definitely gonna be very interesting to see how his concept art is taken and turned into an asset within the game itself for us to go and view upon. So let's go and have a look at the texturing as well. This is the first basically drawn design of the first iteration of Halfling female and male, and we can go through the different stages. And this is basically the first 3D modeling of how they bring it into the as a game asset itself. And then we basically have the 3 different variations on how they went about it. So they started off with the basic texturing. That's the picture of the molded female halfling. Now you see on the left side on this screenshot, you've got the basic outside skinning of a raw halfling. The second image gives it its baseline of hair, its skin tone, and then the third image basically describes and shows how the hair comes to life. And when you see it going from left to right, you can see how much detail and time has been put into it and thought on these characters, and it looks really, really good.
Yeah, you can see the life being brought into the character as you move from left to right.
Yeah, and it's important to note that although these are 3D models, they may not be in-game models.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look at the ogre from the last stream, even when it was really, really bright, I had made a comment before we went on our little break that the environment looked very cartoony because it was very bright and the brightness was turned up. Unfortunately, I'm sitting there looking at those models going, that's a little close to the cartoonish side for me. Does worry me a little bit. So if it worries me a little bit, I'm sure it worries other people too.
Yeah.
But like I said, that does not mean that is potentially in-game model. There's still a lot more things that have to go and happen to it. And for an in-game model, that was awfully detailed.
Yeah.
Especially when it's compared to like the ogre. Granted, the ogre had good detail to it, but not that level.
Well, I also think it's something that, VR wanted to show off because of, the critique that they've been getting in the past as well. When are you going to make the game look great? When are you going to make it look beautiful? Well, they've gone and done it justice right now with that October newsletter, the tech stream. They're showing basically their potential and what they can do.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, and Lex is definitely right. Going back to that 3D model, it does look a little out of place from what we've seen so far in game. How they've, if you look at the Archai, you look at the Ogre, and then you have that 3D model of the Halfling, it's kind of out of place. So
but,
we'll have to see.
I mean, I might be wrong too. I mean, that might be the actual model for the Halflings, or that might be their goal for release.
Yeah.
We just don't know. And if that is the case, if that is what the Halflings will look like in game at release, then you can probably feel a little secure in knowing that all the races will be treated with the same amount
of detail,
of passion.
Yeah, definitely.
But you basically can't start off when you're making a game with that kind of asset, because that's a lot of hours when all you need is something to show where the character's at,
Yeah. That's what they've always tried to bring across and tell people, make people aware of. These are the kind of things that we will touch at the last moment. This is stuff that's going to be looked at in the final working process of the game. They're trying to build, they're trying to make sure that the world's there, the game is fun, it makes sense, and so forth, and go through a proper structuring of how they're going about the game. And with spending hours and hours and hours early on doing something with like the concept art, is something that they don't want to approach. You know, that's something they want to go and do at the last resort, because that's a skinning. You know, you put a character into the world, and then you can go and reskin that and remodel that and reshape that whenever you want. And it does take a lot of time to do, but there's more important things going forward now rather than what the characters look like. So I think they kind of went out their way just to show off, hey, these are our possibilities. Now, let us go and build this amazing game, and you've seen what we can do. We will deliver. Yeah.
No, I think they will get it right at the end of the day.
Yeah. So, Lex, your final thoughts, man?
Well, even though this is the revisitation of the Halflings, I'm actually kind of excited for the people that are looking forward to Halflings. I think they're going to get more than what they asked for in the end. And I think people that really embody the spirit of the Halfling are really going to enjoy what they receive.
Yeah.
And for me, they're going to make a nice little snack.
Agreed. For me, I think that if VR put this much effort into all their races, it's going to be one hell of a game. And the amount of detail that they put into the Halflings, I just cannot wait to see some of the more unique races within the game itself, and how things are going to look. The world is going to be so rich if this is the amount of detail that they're going to be in. It's going to be a great game.
Yeah, definitely. You know, but it's also important to note that if that's what we expect or what we want from them, we're going to have to support them in giving them the time to go and do it. You know, not rush them and put added pressure onto what they're already doing. And it just goes to show that they basically came out and blew everybody's mind away.
Yeah.
You know, I've never played a Halfling in my life. But revisiting the Halflings, the October newsletter, seeing how they are and what they're all about, it's definitely woken up an interest for me to want to go and try out these guys and definitely go and visit them as soon as possible. And this is one race that I want to go and visit early on and see what they're about, how they live and what they are, and so forth and so forth. So I can't wait to see what comes next. They've already talked about working on Archai and the Elven structuring and stuff like that, assets. So I wonder what we're going to see next.
Agreed.
And see where they go from here on out. So with that, guys, that's the Halfling show for today.
Yes? One thing, my nephew wants to say something.
Okay.
Say it. Never know.
This will rock. This will rock.
There you go.
Awesome. Yeah, so that's the Halfling Revisited show. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back next Thursday with player Q&A. Same time, same channel. And it just feels so good to be back. I enjoyed it. We hope you guys enjoyed yourselves. And we'll see you all next Thursday for our player Q&A. Take care, guys. Have a wonderful evening. And absolutely right, young man. This is going to rock. Absolutely right. Take care.
See you, everybody.
Cheers, guys.
They haven't seen my bunny.